Hi guys, welcome to my channel, and today we're doing a refashion of this old top into an off-the-shoulder barred up top. Okay, so the first thing that I'm doing here is cutting off this flowy part that we have that goes around the neck and around the arms. So we're cutting that off because we're going to use that for 2 sleeves. What you see me now doing is laying out the flowy part that we cut off, and I'm just getting ready to cut down the middle so we can separate it to see how much space we have for the sleeves. So you just see me pinning all along the edge to make sure the fabric doesn't shift when I'm about to cut it. So I'm just cutting all the way down this edge, and now you just see me laying out the top, which is good for when you're doing like any refashion, because you want to be able to see like what you're doing. So now you just see me measuring out where the top is gonna start. So the measurements that you see me doing here are measurements that I've measured on myself to make sure the breast part is covered, and also enough space to give me a nice lettuce hem that I'm going for. Here you just see me pinning the front part to keep it in place, so then I can just mark out the back part the same as I did the front section. So now I'm just starting to cut around the armhole. So I'm cutting around the sleeve carefully, but as you do this, make sure where the chalk line is on the actual top that you mark that same line on the sleeve part. So then when you're going to sew it back, you know where to start from. So now you just see me continuing to cut around the sleeve, and I'm going to do this on both sides, and then we can start cutting the actual top. Now you see me just pinning up the button stand because you want things to stay in place, and I have a thing about things staying in place because you do not want it to be uneven on any of the sides. Now you just see me measuring out the seam allowance, and don't forget to add seam allowance, because if you don't, you're gonna have to take it out the actual part that's gonna cover your breast area, and you do not want to do that. So make sure you remember seam allowance. Okay, so now I'm about to cut the top, and this is where it goes wrong. So I cut the top instead of cutting seam allowance, I know. So you just see me pause in this video, and yeah, it wasn't great. So I just had to retrieve it by cutting the right line instead of the wrong one. And you'll see how I fixed this later on in the video. So now I'm just cutting all the way around the top to make sure everything is neat, tidy. I'm doing it carefully now because of what happened. So yeah. And then you just see me cutting the top part, because this part that I'm cutting now will be the front, and then the part that's the bottom of the top will be the back. I hope I'm explaining this right, but if not, then the video will give you a better idea of what I'm actually doing. And now I am cutting out the bottom part of the top, the same as I did with the top half. So now I'm just cutting down the button stand in the middle because we're not going to need this button stand part. So as you can see, I am cutting the top, I'm cutting it to make the top bigger. So then when we put the elastic in, it will cinch together to give you that ruffled effect. So this is how I'm doing that. So I'm cutting it all apart and then I'm showing you how I place it together, and that's exactly how you're going to sew it back together. Remember what I did earlier with the cutting in the wrong place? Well, this is me fixing it. So I'm just doing a zigzag stitch over the part which I cut all the way to the end and back again. So then it's together, as you can see. So yeah, back to the top. So the way I'm laying it out here is how you're going to sew it back together. So you're going to end up with a oversized tube top, and that's the aim. So you just see me here edge stitching all the way around. So I'm doing this with a zigzag stitch to create that lettuce hem, and it also finishes off the edges so it's not a raw edge. So now you see me get to the front part where the button stand is. So all you need to do is just make sure that the button stand is lined up with the edge of the top, and you just pin it in place and you just continue with your zigzag stitch all the way around. And then here you just see me sewing down the button stand, so that's on the top and the bottom, to secure it and keep it in place. Now here I'm just marking out where the sleeve is gonna go. So remember that point from earlier that you marked? Well, you start from there and you just kind of go along the top. You put your seam allowance in, which you can see from what I'm doing on here, and then obviously I'm pinning it to keep everything together. So where you see me pointing and the points, that's where the sleeve's gonna go to. And then now you see me just cutting out the sleeve and cutting away any edges that don't go with the shape of the sleeve that I'm trying to create. So this is what you're left with, is your two sleeves that I've cut out and ready to be attached to the bandeau part of the top. Okay, so now this is what the top looks like with the sleeves sewn on. So this is when I was cutting the cuff of the sleeve, because I wasn't going for like a flared sleeve, I was going for like a fitted ruched type sleeve. So this is me cutting one side. So what I did was pin the line that I was going to cut and then cut along the where I pinned. And then what I did after that was line up the other sleeve, lay the sleeve I cut first on top of that one, pin it to the other sleeve, and then cut it again. So then I had two sleeves which were the same length and the same shape. Okay guys, we are nearly there. So now you just see me measuring how wide my elastic is and how big I need to make the casing to fit it all the way around the top to create the ruching effect. So when you have measured, then you just pin into place. So I think this was around 2.5 centimeters. I did the casing all the way around. So what I did is when I put it on the machine, I just went round, did a few stitches, then I would get the measuring tape measure out again and check, and then just keep going. So the size of your casing depends on how wide your elastic is. So obviously if your elastic is wider, then you would need a wider casing. If it's smaller, then you need a smaller one. And now, last but not least, you get your elastic, and now you're going to thread it through. So you put your safety pin through it and then clip it together, and then I put a little bit of masking tape around it to keep it in place. And then you just start pushing it through the casing. You would leave a gap in the casing to be able to do this. Once it's all the way through and you get the two ends of the elastic, and you take it to the machine and you stitch that together with a zigzag stitch, anything to make it stay, and then you're finished basically. So all you need to do now is just close up the hole that you left for the elastic to go through, and you're done. And then you have the finished product.